Hello, today we'll be talking about invoices and cash discounts. In business, when you pay for a product, you typically would get an invoice. And an invoice would always have an amount. Also, invoice will have the date of the invoice. And also, invoice will have terms. Of course, amount is self-explanatory. For example, invoice can have an amount of $10,000. Date of the invoice is when the invoice has been issued. So for example, let's take that date as October 10, 2020. And terms of the invoice would be something like this: 5/10, 3/15, and net over 30. So let's talk about the terms of the invoice. What do they mean? How do we read this? It's 5/10, 3/15, net 30. So this N here would be pronounced as net. So what is the meaning? The meaning is that if you pay for this invoice within first 10 days, in the bottom of all those, we can see them written as fraction. So in the bottom you can see 10 here, and this means that if you pay for the invoice within first 10 days, you will get 5% off. If you pay after 10 days, but within 15 days, so from day 11 up to day 15, you will get 3% off for the invoice. And finally, you need to pay for the invoice within 30 days of the invoice date. You cannot pay later. Later, it will be a fine, but if you pay later than 15 days, so if you pay on day 16 and later up to day 30, you should pay the net price. You will not be getting any discount. So the point of this structure, the point of the terms of the invoice, is to give you incentive to pay as early as possible for the invoice. And the earlier you pay, the more discount you would be receiving. It is important to note that October 10 here, the day of the invoice, is considered to be day 0 of the invoice. So October 10 is day 0. Okay? So these terms, when we speak about these terms, 5/10, 3/15, net 30, they take into account the fact that the actual day of the invoice is day 0. So let's check this out on the timeline. So on this timeline here, let's put the day of the invoice, and that will be October 10. That's the day of the invoice, when the invoice has been written. So now let's see what will be day 5 of the invoice, right? So it's going to be October 20. Because October 11 is day 1, so October 20 is going to be day 10 of the invoice. 10 days have passed since the day of the invoice. So we have 10 days here. And I'll circle this time here as with green color, just to specify that that's the invoice date. So within these 10 days, the customer would be getting 5% off. So 5% off. And of course, because as we already learned, there is such thing as time value of money. Customers could invest money for some time, so therefore it doesn't make sense for the customers to pay earlier than the latest day they can pay. And in practice, usually people would pay on October 19 or October 20 for this invoice. And they would use all this time up to October 20 to keep that money in some investment to earn a little bit of interest. We can expect, therefore, that the invoice, if the customer would like to get that 5% off, we can expect that the invoice would be paid on October 20. And that will be the last day to get 5% discount. The next opportunity for discount, which was 3% off, is until October 25. Let me put here October 25. And we, of course, have 5 days for that. 5 days starting October 21 and ending October 25. And that will be 3% off that customers will be receiving. Finally, we have net 30 here. So it's 30 days since start of the invoice. October has 31 days. So since October 10, we have 21 days until the end of October. So 21 days in October plus 9 more days in November. It will be, of course, November 9. If you are ever confused about this, you can always use Excel to compute the last day of the invoice. Especially that is helpful if you have another month which is starting in between. So in A1, you can type October 10. So that's the day the invoice was written. And then you will add 30 days to October 10. And Excel will tell you that it's November 9. Okay, so we will now write here November 9. And it's 15 days here. 15 days. And it's net price that will be paid since October 25 up to November 9. So October 25, once again, is the last day to get 3% off. October 25 is included to get 3% off. But starting October 26 and up to and including November 9, you must pay net price. It is very important to note that because October 10 is day 0, so here October 20 is included. So I'll just put it here. The arrow to show that October 20 is included as part of 5% off. October 25 is included as part of 3% off. And November 9 is included as part of the net price payment. And usually, of course, customers will pay exactly on those days and maybe one day before just to avoid any delay in processing. It's not a good idea, for example, to pay this invoice on October 11, because if you pay this invoice on October 11, you will still get, of course, 5% off, but you will forego all the interest that you could earn for 10 days if you invested this money. You could invest the money, wait for 10 days, and then pay on October 20 and keep interest for yourself. All right, we will see how all this works using problems, and that's what we'll be doing right now. In our first problem, we see this. An invoice amounting to $5,000 has terms 5/15 net 30. If the invoice date is October 7, 2020, what payment would settle this invoice on October 22nd? In this case, we have terms which are simpler. We have only 2 terms here. we have 515 and net 30. So what this means is that if the invoice is paid within 15 days, 5% discount will be given. And if the invoice is paid within 30 days, but after 15 days, so on day 16 and later, up to and including day 30, it's net price that must be paid. In other words, it's full price that must be paid. In here, we have invoice date October 7, 2020, and October 7, 2020 is day 0. The payment is happening on October 22nd. We need to identify how many days are between October 22 and October 7. So of course, it's pretty straightforward. It's 22 minus 7, right? So it's going to be 15 days. And October 22nd, therefore, is day 15. Now, if there is any difficulty ever with this calculation, again, it is possible to use Excel. And here we can simply enter October 7. And then we can enter October 22nd. And then we can subtract October 7th from October 22nd. So you see, it's day 15. But it's not a very difficult calculation anyways, but especially Excel could be helpful if months change and you forget if a month has 31 days or 30 days. And you should also be careful about leap years, because in leap years, February, for example, has 29 days, not 28 days, and so on. Now, we have day 15 for your invoice payment, and day 0 is for the invoice date. And because you pay on the 15th day, it's 5% discount that is given here. And what amount then would settle the invoice? So we have payment. Payment is $5,000 discounted by 5%, $4,750. So if this invoice is paid for on October 22nd, which is day 15, it is going to be 5% off, and therefore the payment for the invoice will be $4,750. Let's proceed now to another problem, and this is this. An invoice dated August 23, 2020 is for the amount of $8,500. The terms are 710, 520, net 30. What payment would settle the invoice on September 12, 2020? Well, again, in this case, we have three terms, 710, 7% off within first 10 days, then 5% off within 20 days, and net within 30 days. We have day 0, which is August 23, 2020. The question is, what about September 12th? What date is September 12th? Again, what we can do, we can call Excel to help us out here. We have September 12. Then we have August 23. And again, because September comes after August, so we subtract August 23 from September 12. And we see that it's 20 days. So September 12 is day 20 of the invoice. So we're here. Again, we're supposed to pay 5% less than 8,500. Therefore, payment payment is going to be 8,500. 1 minus 0.05. It's 8,075. Let's go ahead now to check another problem. And it reads, Lex Industries received an invoice amounting to 78,000 with terms 215 net 30. If they made a partial payment of $50,000 within the discount period, what will be the balance on the invoice? What will be the total paid for the invoice? Now, in this problem is not as simple as the previous ones, and you should be careful here. So, of course, we have two terms here, and the first term is 2% off within 15 days, and then it's net within 30 days. However, you need to pay attention that in this problem we're given that the company is making partial payment. And what it means is that the company might not have the full amount to pay at this point, and therefore they decided to pay the partial payment within the discount window. So once they had $50,000, they decided to put it towards the invoice to get 2% off, and they decided to pay the rest later. Now, when we read here discount window, what does it mean, discount period? So discount period is right here. It's when they get the discount. That's the discount period. So 15 days is the discount. 15 days is the discount period. That's what this problem is referring to. What is happening when the company is paying $50,000 within the discount period? Okay, so there is a very common mistake which students make. Okay, so I'll put it here. So mistake is to do the following. Because 50,000 is paid within the discount period, students will find 2% off from the $50,000. Once again, I repeat, that's a mistaken way to solve this problem. And it's discount $50,000, that first payment, by 2% because it was paid within the discount period. So basically the company is supposed to pay $49,000. And the balance on the invoice, therefore, in this mistaken calculation would be 78,000 minus 49,000. And somebody who solves it with this mistaken way, they would say that that's the balance on the invoice. So what is remaining to be paid? And what is the total paid? They would say total would be found in the following way, which is 3. It's 49,000 paid in the beginning plus 29,000. So it's going to be 78,000. Of course, this is a mistake to compute this way, right? So please pay attention that it's a mistaken way to compute it. And one of the ways to see why it is a mistake, because we got that nonsensical answer here, right? So that is 78,000 that you must pay for the invoice, even though this company received a discount within first 15 days. So regardless of that discount, the company ended up paying 78,000, which is the full amount of the invoice. So something is going on here which is wrong. So the correct way is to solve this way. So this is the correct solution. And in this correct solution, we need to pay attention that when the company pays that partial payment within the discount period, the company receives a credit. So credit is received. This credit is the amount that the company has paid out by paying $50,000. So the company is paying out some amount X, such that if that amount is discounted by 2%, that will be $50,000. In other words, when the company is paying $50,000 within the discount period, they cover some bigger amount by this $50,000, which if discounted by 2% will be exactly that $50,000. That's how it works. And it's very important to note that if you pay that partial payment, you're receiving credit. You're paying a portion of the invoice, in other words, which if discounted by 2% will give you the amount that you pay during that partial period. And this credit, therefore, can be found from this equation. So it's $50,000 divided by 1 minus 0.02. 51,020.41. So once again, after we calculate it, I want to explain that this 51,020.41 is the amount that this company is paying for if they pay $50,000. That's because during the discount period, there is 2% discount. And when 50,000 is being paid, the full 50,000 is going towards payment of an amount which is 51,020.41. So 51,020.41 has been paid out by $50,000 when this $50,000 was paid within that discount period. And therefore, because 51,020.41 has been paid out of the invoice, the balance is found this way. That is 78,000, the total amount of the invoice minus what has been paid out already. And that is 26,979.59. So that is how much it is remaining to be paid after that 50,000 initial payment was made during the discount period. And therefore the total is $50,000, what has been already paid, plus 26,979.59. So total paid for the invoice will be 76,979.59. So that is the total paid for the invoice, which is $78,000. As you can see, in this case, the company paid a lower amount because the company received a discount during the discount period, which now makes sense versus that incorrect solution, which didn't make sense. Okay. So once again, I want to review here is that please pay attention that when the company paid $50,000, they actually paid out a bigger amount. And how big is that amount that they covered? That amount is X, which if discounted by 2% would give you how much the company has paid during the discount period, right? So in other words, by paying $50,000, the company has covered an amount X, which we found to be 51,020.41. And we call that amount X as credit. And then we find balance, which is the total of the invoice from which we subtract the credit received. And that's the balance, which means that it's the amount of money remained to be paid for the invoice. And because there is no more discount, because it's net price now which needs to be paid, the company will have to pay this full 26,979.59 for that invoice, and therefore it results in the total paid for the invoice $50,000, which is the initial payment plus that balance. So the total is 76,979.59. Just pay attention that this is the mistaken solution. So never solve problems of partial payment with this mistaken solution. Let's now proceed to another problem, which is here. On March 5, 2020, Andres received an invoice for his purchase, $45,000 with terms 3/5, 2/10, net 15. He made $5,000 payment on March 10 and $10,000 payment on March 15. What amount must he still pay? Well, in this problem we have three terms, 3/5, 2/10, net 15. And we have two partial payments actually. So $5,000 is the first partial payment and $10,000 is the second partial payment. Now, first partial payment, which is $5,000, was made on March 10. And what day is March 10? Well, the day of the invoice is March 5. So March 10 is day 5, which means that it's here, right? So Andres would be receiving 3% discount for payments made within the first 5 days, and because his payment is on March 5, so he would be entitled for 3% off. Another payment is $10,000 made on March 15. Now, what is this March 15? March 15 is day 10, right? So it's day 10. And because it's a day 10, it's right here. So it's 2% off. And when the question is, what amount must he still pay? And this amount is the balance that we need to find. So let's go ahead and solve this problem. Because Andres pays $5,000 within first discount window, but because this $5,000 is not the full amount of the invoice, this $5,000 is the partial payment. It's not full payment, and therefore Andres will be getting credit X. And this credit X is such that if discounted by 3%, it must equal to what he paid, which is $5,000. So Andres, by paying $5,000, receives credit, the amount that he pays out, such that if discounted by 3% will be $5,000. So X will be $5,000 divided by 0.97, and this is equal to 5,154.64. In these type of transactions, credits are rounded to 2 decimal places. Now, if we continue, we will find out that what is the balance now? So we have the first balance. So balance 1. So what is that first balance? It is going to be $45,000 minus 5,154.64. 0.64. It's going to be 39,845.36. So that's the first balance. In other words, that's the remainder to be paid after that first payment of $5,000. But Andres will be paying another partial payment, which is $10,000 here, which means that Andres would be receiving now another credit, and that is subject to 2% discount. So Y is $10,000 divided by 0.98, and it is 10,204.08. And the balance too is the previous balance, which is 39,845.36, minus that new credit received. So balance 2 is going to be 29,641.28. So the question is, what amount must he still pay? And that's the answer. This is the balance that Andres still must pay after two payments. So there are two payments here. First is $5,000, after which 5,154.64 credit was given. So we accounted for this credit and found the first balance. So after that $5,000 was paid, now Andres has to pay still 39,845.36, but he still makes another partial payment, which is $10,000, receives another credit here. We account for that credit in calculation of the final balance that he still needs to pay, which is 29,641.28. So that is the process, and that is the solution for this problem. Let's go ahead and check out another problem. If there is an invoice for $30,000 with terms 720 net 45, what payment made during the discount period would reduce the balance on the invoice to $10,000? We have here two terms, 7% off during first 20 days and net during 45 days. And we're not given any invoice date. That's because we're not even told when the payment is made, but we are told that the payment is made during the discount period, so it's really not relevant or important for us to know the date of the invoice or when the payment was made, because we already know that that payment is happening within first 20 days, so 7% off would be given here, and we don't know that payment which must be made. So let's call that payment P. It is that payment which is made during the discount period. But we know that when this payment P is made, credit X is given. Now, what is that credit? It's credit that if we discount it by 7%, it will be exactly that payment P that is made, right? In other words, we can find X here, that credit, and it's going to be P divided by 0.93. We are also told that the balance of the invoice should be reduced to $10,000. It means that we have to have the $30,000 reduced by the credit, and credit is P over 0.93, and we should be receiving $10,000 as the result. So once again, because credit X is given for that payment P, that credit X, whatever that is going to be P divided by 0.93. So that credit means that that's the amount of the invoice that we already pay when we pay our payment P. And therefore, the total of the invoice is $30,000. We reduce that amount by the credit we are receiving, and we should be getting $10,000 as our balance. So now what we need to do is to solve this equation. So how do we solve it? We multiply both sides by 0.93 to get rid of this 0.93 from the bottom here. So it is 30,000 times 0.93 minus P equals to 10,000 times 0.93. From here we will be finding P, and again, that's just a little bit of very simple modification of this equation. So we move P to this side, we move 10,000 times 0.93 to that side, and let's now find P. It's going to be 18,600. So the partial payment that must be made is 18,600. But we can check. We can check. So let's check it to make sure. And also checking will also make another explanation why this was the way we solved this problem. Okay, so we are receiving credit, which is X, and if that is discounted by 7%, that should be $18,600, because $18,600 is that partial payment. So we pay out some bigger amount, which is credit. And how big is that amount? It is the amount, if discounted by 7%, should be equaling to the payment we're making. So X, which is the credit, is 18,600 divided by 0.93. It's $20,000. Right? So $20,000 is the credit, which means that because the invoice is $30,000 and because the credit we are receiving is $20,000, so the balance is exactly 30,000 minus $20,000 the credit, so $10,000. So it all works, and we do receive this $10,000 as a result. Therefore, this solution is definitely correct. We need to make that partial payment, $18,600, to reduce the balance to $10,000. Well, that's it for this topic. Bye for now.